Hey now, Brawlers, it's time for another Board Game Brawl review with Nick Minahan, sponsored by BoardGameBliss.com. Today we're going to take a look at Rolling Japan from Okazu brand and designer Hisashi Hayashi. Now that name might sound familiar because he is the designer of Trains, another wonderful Japanese game that AEG brought over. Fantastic game. Rolling Japan is obviously much smaller than that, and it's actually fairly themeless. Like when I first heard about Rolling Japan, I thought maybe it was based on trains. It made kind of sense that it would be. But no, it's just rolling dice and filling in numbers on a map of Japan, which really looks like just a very abstract series of squares and rectangles. That all might sound very strange, but if you've ever played the game Quicks, you're actually halfway there to what this game is all about. Let's go ahead and take a brief look at how the game is played, then we're going to come back and let you know what I think. Alright, I'll give you a brief overview of Rolling Japan. This is a competitive game for 1 to however many players you want, really. The game comes with 8 pencils and a somewhat limited amount of pieces of paper on the pad, but if you were to get more pencils and to just run photocopies of these sheets, you can play with theoretically as many players as you want. Because as the box even says, this is a multiplayer solitaire game. You are trying to write little numbers in each of the boxes on your sheet of paper, which is supposed to represent Japan. It's supposed to be a map of all the prefectures of Japan. You're trying to write down numbers in such a way that they'll be sort of cascading off of each other, and I'll explain how that works in a moment. Anytime that you must write a number down in one of the colored areas on the sheet and you can't, you have to write down an X, and X's are bad. At the end of the game, which is going to be 8 rounds of play, whoever has the least X's marked down in any of the boxes on their sheet is going to be the winner of the game. So you want to have the least amount of X's. So to set up, everyone's going to get a sheet of paper and one of these little golf pencils. And here, I'll even write my name down because we'll make this legit and proper. And then there are these 7 dice and the bag. Now, the 7 dice each correspond to one of the colored sections on the map. In fact, let's go ahead and get a little close-up of what this map looks like. So these are each of the prefectures in the game. And there is, however, a purple die. The purple die is actually wild whenever that comes up. So what's going to happen is all of the 7 dice are going to go into the bag. And you'll decide who's going to go first, however you want to do it. On the first player's turn, they're going to draw 2 dice at random from the bag, and they're going to roll those 2 dice. Now, how this is going to work is that everyone's going to keep going around, and someone will take turns rolling, assuming you're playing with multiple people and not just solo. Everyone's going to take turns drawing 2 dice from the bag and rolling them until you've used 6 of the 7 dice that are in the bag. At that point, the next player resets the dice, meaning that all the dice go back into the bag, and then you do it all over again. So it's possible that the die that you want to come out does not come out. It just might be random chance. Now, when the 2 dice come out, let's just go ahead and roll those again. There we have a blue 5 and a red 1. Immediately, these dice are communal, so everyone is working off of the same dice. Immediately, everyone has to look at their blue section of the map and put a 5 there, and at the red section of the map and put a 1 there. Now, this is where it gets a little bit interesting. Now, you can put these numbers anywhere you want at the start of the game. But then, for the rest of the game, any number that goes into a box that is adjacent to a box that already has a number in it, that number in the box, I know I'm not explaining this right, but that number has to be 1 less or greater than the number it's adjacent to, or there has to be an X there already. Let me just give you an example. So I'm going to take this blue 5 and I'm going to mark it down here. So I've got, let's make that even closer. So I've got a blue 5 in the box, and I'm just going to put this, I'm not even giving a thought to strategy right now. I'm just going to put the 1 red right there. So let's just say that we fast forward a bit and these 2 dice come up again. So now I have a 5 or a 3. So I can put the 5 in a completely different blue box if I want. But it is legal for me to put that here right next to the other 5 because it's either the same number or within 1. I could also put a 4 or a 6 here as well. And then for this 3, however, for red, well, I can't do that. I can't put that because it's not within 1. So I can't put that in any of these 3 boxes because all these are considered adjacent to this 1. And in fact, the colors bleed into one another as well. So this box is considered, blue box is considered adjacent to this yellow box. And these lines also connect boxes. So this green box is considered adjacent to this. This is the color black, actually, and then here's white over here. So I can't put this 3 here, so I'm going to have to put it in a new spot. I'll put this 3 here in this big, long, rectangular box. And I'll hope that I have a 2 that I can put here, because a 2 would be okay to put here because it's within 1, and it's of each of those numbers. Let's see what happens. So now we have blue 5s. Well, blues are going very well here because I can just keep putting 5s next to each other. But now I have a red 5, and, oh, I did. I have a red 5, and that's a bit of a problem. So I could put the red 5 here because this red box is still isolated from the other ones. But I couldn't put the red 5 here because that's a 3. That's 2 away. And I certainly couldn't put it next to the 1. So as you can see, your options start to become more and more limited. Now, at any time during the game, 3 times per game, you may choose to institute a color change. A color change means you can immediately take a die that was just rolled and you can instead use it as another color. So I can make this red 5 a blue 5 and really go all 5s on that blue. Or I could just make it a completely different color and put it over there. But you can only do that 3 times per game. The other exception to this is the purple die, which I already mentioned, which is wild. When that die comes up, whatever number comes up, you can make that any color you want. Same rules apply. You still need to follow the rules of placement for the numbers, but otherwise you can just put it wherever you want. Now, what happens if none of this works? You can't color change, or you don't want to color change, and nothing just fits because you can't follow the rules of number placement. Then you have to place an X. So let's say that let's say that I use that 5 from before, and I put that 5 here, and then I see if I just get something random. So there's a 3, and let's see, I really can't put this 3 anywhere, really. I can't, actually. I think I'm being legitimate with my example. So I have to put an X. I can put that X wherever I want in that color that's empty. And so I'll just go ahead and put it here. And if everything in a color is filled up, either with numbers or with X's, then that number doesn't apply to me anymore. I'm not required to put down anything. But so long as there are empty boxes, I must either put a number if the rules allow, or place an X. I don't have a choice in that matter. So you're going to keep doing this, putting down numbers and potentially putting down X's until you've gone through 8 rounds of play. A round is considered every time the bag has to be reset. That's the start of a new round. So you'll do that 8 times and then at the end of the game, everyone's going to count up every single X that they were forced to put on their sheet, and whoever has the least amount of X's is the winner. Let's get to my final thoughts. Alright, well, the first thing I'll say is that Rolling Japan is not widely available, as you might expect. This is one of those smaller Japanese games that had a very small release at Essen last year. Now, copies of it have continued to be produced, and they've been trickling over to the US through retailers, online retailers like Board Game Bliss, our sponsor, but those companies specialize in releasing these harder-to-find games, or selling these hard-to-find games. So, but I wouldn't worry about it too much. If you like what you saw here, I would suspect that it will be released domestically eventually, because there's a couple companies, including AEG, who release Trains, also from the same designer, who will, and IDW Pandasaurus. These companies really like putting out these Japanese games, and this seems to be right up their alley. It was kind of a hit, a cult hit at Essen. A lot of people were talking about it, so I wouldn't worry about it too much. As far as the theme and components of the game, no theme whatsoever. We can move on from that. I mean, you're filling in boxes that's supposed to be the map of Japan or prefectures in Japan, but it vaguely looks like Japan. You'll easily forget about that. If it wasn't called Rolling Japan, you would not even suspect that it had anything to do with Japan or Japanese culture, or Japanese people, or anything whatsoever. That's fine. As far as the components, the wooden dice are cool. I like wooden dice. They're not colorblind friendly. Nothing in this game is colorblind friendly that I could tell, unless I was missing some symbols on the sheet of the colored boxes. And the golf pencils are okay. I'm sure you can go buy a whole bag of them at your local golf retailer. And then it's just pads and paper. So the components are really nothing to speak of, but it's not really that kind of game, so don't worry about it. Mechanically speaking, it's pretty interesting. I mentioned during my intro that if you've played Quicks, you're halfway there. The half of that I was referring to is rolling a communal pool of dice and having everyone mark down numbers on their sheet bingo style once they see what everything is. And it says right there in the box it's a multiplayer solitaire game. And that's what this is. You're seeing what numbers are and you're writing down on your sheet, and you do not interact with anyone else at all. It's all about just trying to get the most points, but there's nothing you can do about what anyone else is doing. You're just hoping that you're doing better. And I do like there's a couple things I really like. One is that, unlike in Quicks, going back to that for a moment, you're trying to write down numbers or cross off numbers, but you don't want to go too far down the track, because if you go too far off the track, you can't go back at all, and you're missing out on points. So for example, if you roll and you take a red 4 in Quicks, you'll never be able to fill in the 2 and 3 if you haven't already, so you're missing out on points there. And if you go way far ahead of the track, you may potentially lose out on a ton of points because you won't be able to fill in enough boxes to complete each of the rows. If you've never played Quicks, that probably doesn't make much sense. But in Rolling Japan, it's different. In Rolling Japan, it sort of rewards more forward thinking than even that, because you have to decide not just where the number should go within the same color, but it also links to other sections depending on where it is on the map. So you really need to think far ahead, like if I put this 6 right here, how is this going to limit me? If I put it right here smack dab in the middle, is that even worse, or is that going to be better? And is it going to be easy for me to branch out? What are the odds of a certain number coming up? And your options get more and more narrow as time goes on, as you continue to fill in boxes. And if you can't fill in a box, there's the overwhelming pressure of having to put in one of those X's. But that's another cool part of the game, though, too, is that when you are forced to put down an X, how you put down the X makes a huge difference, because the limitations of the game say that you have to be within 1 on either end of the number that you're writing down adjacent to. Or it has to be an X. So if it's an X, that's kind of like you're making a barrier. Like it's already, I don't know what thematically is supposed to represent, a dead area in the prefecture. So you can decide to put that X in a place that's going to be most beneficial to you. Like, oh, I was going to have to put in another X here anyways if this kept going the way that it is. So let me put the X here, and now, I know that's hard to explain, it's kind of an abstract concept, but it's just you failing in a way that's going to make things more convenient for you later on when you have to put more numbers there. So I do dig that, and it's a logic puzzle is what it is. And I hate to say this because it sounds like more of a negative than a positive, or more negative than a neutral, but it felt like Sudoku in a way. It felt like a more complicated, more rewarding Sudoku, which makes sense. I mean, you're filling in numbers in boxes. So, but I do like the whole thing, just like in Quicks, where you're matching up colors to the map, and I like that there's no guarantee that a number or a color is going to come out on the bag in that round, because, I mean, like the first game of this that we played, we went through 4 rounds without seeing white. It just didn't come up. It just was stuck in the bag. That's what happens when you have an uneven amount of dice and then you have to reset. So that was a really big anomaly. But things like that can happen. You're really hoping for a color to come out, and it just doesn't come out. You're really hoping for that wild purple to come out, and it just doesn't happen. So the game is very random, and sometimes you're just not going to get very lucky with what you have. But again, I think that an experienced player, because they might be better at logic puzzles, will have an easier time than everyone else. It's a good game. It's not a great game. It's very, very light. It's very, very dry. There's no exciting moments in this game. There's no like, aha, I got you, or yeah, take that, because there's no interaction whatsoever. And I know that a lot of people are not going to like that, but if you just want something very light and simple and that rewards some logical thinking, but is not a total brain burner like a lot of Euro games are, then you might want to give this one a shot. In fact, I would say that this is probably the Eurogamers type of filler game. It's probably perfect for that type of crowd, because there's no bluffing involved, there's no like silliness, it's just straight up, how can I make this work for me in the best way possible? What is the strategy here? How should I put this number in order to make this sort of cascade of numbers come out? It's a decent game. I like it. Not for everybody, but I think it's a cool little filler. Thanks for watching. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Patreon. And make sure to check out our sponsor, Board Game Bliss, where you can find an amazing selection of games from around the world. BoardGameBliss.com. Thanks for your support.